Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That music means, of course, it's time for the Hillsdale Dialogue, the last radio hour of the week. This week we are grateful to have Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, back with us. It's always a busy time, June and July, up in Hillsdale. I don't know why. Michigan is kind of a sleepy, lonely place in the summertime, but he's busy right up through July. And so it's good to see you again, Dr. Arnn. Are you back in Hillsdale, Leah?
I am. The college has gotten completely out of hand, and there seems to be something to do all the time. Somebody's making a mess of this place.
Well, do you have teachers on campus right now, or is it actually just administrivia?
You know, we have in a typical week in the summer, we have 600 or 800 visitors to our campus staying somewhere near here and in our hotel. And there's summer school. There's not a lot of that. There's hostels for regular folks. There's school teachers. I think 1,300 school teachers spend a week on the campus during the summer. So it's busy. It's really busy.
All right. The country has not been slow either. Wow, since we have last spoken. So I want to catch up. Next week, we're going to finish this book, Winston Churchill's My Early Life, which I think it'll be our part 14. The following week, we're going to get launched onto Churchill's Second World War memoir. But today, we're just going to look back at the conclusion of the first 6 months of the Trump presidency, second time around. And I've come to the conclusion, I sent it to you, I don't know if you got the email, that Donald Trump had the best first 6 months of any presidential term since LBJ. Now, LBJ's 6 months were full of disasters in the Great Society, but they also had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, huge majorities. They ramped up Vietnam. So it went badly, but he got a lot done in those 6 months. What do you make of my assertion about Trump's first 6 months?
Well, they hit the ground running, and they've got a plan, and they've got a good team, all things that weren't true in his first term. This is very hard to do. And Trump is a very talented man, but he didn't have any experience the first time. This time he does. And so, Mike Johnson is, you may or may not like the big, beautiful bill. You got to like some things in it for sure. But the fact that it happened is astonishing. And so the Congress is helping in a big way. And the Supreme Court has issued some rulings that are extremely consequential and that are helpful, and according to my lights and yours.
They are also correct. That's the most important thing for the Supreme Court to do is be correct, and they have been correct today.
Isn't that refreshing?
It is.
The President of the United States can fire bureaucrats.
Yep.
And that's amazing. And you wouldn't think that could ever have happened. We would think it ought to be able to happen, but now it's happening. And I don't know if they're going to get rid of the Department of Education, but the number of people working in it is way down.
I talked to Secretary McMahon earlier this week, and I don't know if they'll get to zero. But she sure does seem to be on a mission, and she sure does seem to know how to get from point A to point B in a hurry.
Yeah, I adore her. And I've gotten to know her, and she loves education. She warms to the subject. She's been on the board of the college where she went. She remembers that fondly. And so she's got a real care. She visited one of our charter schools. She's got a real care for the well-being of schools and children, and she thinks this is the way to pursue that, and I think she's right.
I also had on Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, who came from out our neck of the woods, Southern California, where she practiced plaintiff's law for a long time on behalf of civil rights plaintiffs. And now she's at DOJ. And it is probably the most important job in justice, save that of the AG and the Solicitor General. Some people say the AAG for Office of Legal Counsel. But I think Civil Rights Division, they bring the hammer. She knows what she's about, too, Larry Arnn. She's not slowing down for anybody.
Yeah, I know her. One of my colleagues, Kyle, always reminds me if I'm going to be talking to Secretary McMahon to be careful because she's been in the ring with Stone Cold Austin. and our meet is every bit as tough. And she's very smart, and she's got to care for the law. And I watched your interview with her, and she's brilliant, and she's got an idea about the rule of law and how you get it. And so she's rolling. And
what I liked about that interview, there are two kinds of guests. Those you've got to worry about everything you ask them because they may be caught out. And those you don't have to worry about whatever you ask them because even if it's not something they want to talk about or hadn't prepared for, they're fine. She's definitely in the latter category. She's actually got chops. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so, yeah. Yeah. She gave a talk for the college 2 or 3 years ago. And it was just authoritative. That's a good word for what you're talking about, right? She just knows a lot. And she's very good at distinguishing what she really knows and what she just has thoughts about. And so she's a very powerful, effective woman.
What was most interesting, I've got a lot to cover, but I want to digress for a moment about that. The Civil Rights Division is historically a left-wing operation that takes forever to tame by whoever is appointed, whether it's Brad Reynolds or whoever gets that job in a Republican administration. They kind of have to take a deep breath and throw themselves in among the lefties. Half of them have left. She told me that this is like the greatest thing ever. They've all gotten sick of it, or they've gotten as old as I am, and they've said, I'm not going to work for Harmeet and Pam Bondi, and they've left, and that's a great thing.
I've heard a story that, OJ, remember you who remain to fight fascism every day. And, that's not what's going on there. And that means that whoever put those placards up, they ought to go too.
That State Department fiasco was an embarrassment for the country, and it made me think that they did not fire enough people. That's what
right, not enough yet. And see, what she said was, and see, remember, if you announce a principle this clear, it's binding on you too, right? Correct. People will notice, right? And her principle is we are to protect the civil rights of all impartially, right? We're not going to pick groups that we like and foster them. And that principle, that binds her too, right? That means, and so, but this, the alternative principle, this kind of principle that they had before, which is we're going to go to vulnerable groups. That means we get to say who they are, right? And that makes us powerful. Her principle means everybody alike, and that means she doesn't get to make the choice who to protect, and they don't.
In fact, having the one rule approach to law makes it so much easier. And I'll throw the question at you: when Donald Trump's home was raided by the FBI in 2022, August of 2022, a month later he was talking to Sean Hannity, and he said, "I declassified him. I don't even have to write it down. I can declassify them in my mind. I am the commander-in-chief," and I'm paraphrasing here. And by the way, I think that's constitutionally correct. It's never been adjudicated, but I think it's constitutionally correct, and that's why they should not have gone to Mar-a-Lago. By extension, you've got to then apply an expansive view of presidential power to what Joe Biden did with the pardons. However, it is possible to believe that Trump could declassify and Biden could order the pardons, but we don't know for sure that Biden had the mental competence to order the pardons, although he has now asserted in a 10-minute interview over the phone with New York Times reporters that he did. But there is one rule. Either there's a big, expansive executive or there isn't. How do you think about those two issues, Dr. Arnn?
Well, it's expansive up to the limit, right? And the limit is you can't spend money Congress hadn't voted. The laws constrain you. You don't get to make the law. Parties who are before courts You have to respect the decisions regarding those parties. In other words, it's a very great power, but it is executive alone, and that's important. And then the first daily check on the executive is it's the executive alone. The second comes every time we elect a new president, right?
Yes.
That's the ultimate check. And so it's not an unlimited power. But what I'm so proud about is that the people who work in the executive branch work for the president, and he may let them go.
And we have to, and we are having that decided again and again every day of the first 6 months of Team Trump, and I'm so glad to see it happen. Don't go anywhere. Dr. Arnn will be right back on the Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale, hillsdale.edu.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That music means the Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. All things Hillsdale can be found at hillsdale.edu, including all their video courses, the remarkable ability to sign up for free for the monthly speech digest imprimis, which will be delivered to your home, snail mail, the old style. And all of the Hillsdale Dialogues are found over at hillsdale.edu, or if you want to go direct to them, hughforhillsdale.com. Dr. Arnn, before I move on from the one big beautiful bill, there were two provisions in it that I wanted to ask you about. One I just learned about on Monday. Senator Cruz included a $1,700 federal tax credit in the law that any federal taxpayer can pay to any scholarship granting school. Now, I'm not yet clear if it's K through 12 or if it's K through 16, but $1,700 tax credit is real money if we harness it for people. Like, I don't know. Do you know if it applies to Hillsdale? Can people now write a $1,700 check to Hillsdale and just take it right off the bottom line of their taxes owed?
The short answer is I don't know, but I can tell you what I read this morning. Okay. What I read is it's K through 12, and I read that it will apply in states that adopt it. And the reason it was not more coherent or comprehensive has to do with the Senate parliamentarian. So I don't think it applies to Hillsdale College, but I think it does apply in the right states to our charter schools. And they are grouped in such states, although they're in almost every state. So it's a good thing, and I wish it would have been simply comprehensive.
So I've got to go study it then. If I can't give the money to Hillsdale, I'll give it to my high school in Ohio because it's still doing good classical education work. But it's a great idea to allow. A tax credit is so much more powerful than a tax deduction. And if we can find out where the Hillsdale schools are and match them up with the eligibility rules, we ought to tell people about that because there's no reason in the world. Idea. Yeah, I was just
the reason it's so good is because in America and in any business and any human organization, you want to decentralize as much as you can because human beings are the kind of things that do their own work and seek goals. And so this idea that rules will be written by distant bureaucrats about how to do the details of education, which is the way education is run in America, these bureaucrats never going in a classroom themselves. And you can't write enough rules to cover all of the things that come up. And so you want authority located as near as possible to the problem. Now, this funding mechanism, this tax credit, that's what it will do, because there'll be a wide variety of sources of money for education. And people can go and look for those sources, and they can get some money, and they can try their thing. And if it doesn't work, the parents don't have to send their kids there. It's, it's perfect.
It is perfect. And my hat is off to Senator Cruz. I will get more details. We'll return to that. But now tell me about the endowment tax. I believe they ended up exempting from an endowment tax all schools of an enrollment less than 6,000, if I got the rule right.
3,000.
3,000.
So what I wanted to do, I published this. I wanted them not to do the tax at all. I don't think they ought to tax Harvard's endowment. They're giving Harvard $2.2 billion. If they don't like what they're doing, don't give them the dough. But if you tax their endowment, then you're still giving them the dough. And now the private resources are contracted, and that's the wrong direction, right? So I was against the whole thing. But then my second objection to it was, I don't want to pay it. And I don't want to pay it on the ground that we're not getting all that money. And that is the right ground, right? But then that was struck down by the Senate parliamentarian. So what they did was the cap, the minimum, the minimum not to have to pay the tax is $3,000. The Senate also cut the amount of the tax in half, I understand. It's still a serious amount of money. And so, we're exempted from it at this size, and any other college of our size or less than 3,000 exempted from it. And as I say, I continue in the belief that the whole thing is a bad idea, but I'm glad we're not paying the tax.
Well, I am very glad. We have to disagree on this because I want every hammer thrown at elite education that can be thrown. Assistant Attorney General Dillon, about whom we were talking in the last segment, has made it clear to me that she is not in the business of revoking people's tax-exempt status because that is an IRS determination and there's a barrier between them, which was a nice imposition or a withdrawal, a self-announced withdrawal of authority from someone. Federal bureaucrats usually don't say that. They usually don't say, I haven't got the power to do something. But that was refreshing. But she kept coming back to your point, take the money away from offenders. Well, I hope they do. I hope they do so rather rapidly. I'm not sure. You have been less patient with Harvard than I, and that's probably right because you went there. I can see why you'd be extra mad at them. Yeah. But I can't get past the understanding that Harvard is a great old thing and it should be restored. And all that money they get from the government is one of the reasons why they resist those pressures to restore, right? Is it 2 point? I think, I don't understand the Harvard economics, but I think they may spend $8.5 billion a year, and I think $2.2 billion of it comes from the government. Yeah. And the point is they have been violating the civil rights laws, and they should stop, right? They ought to. They have been told to stop by the Supreme Court explicitly. Yeah. It's not even hard. Yeah. And they should protect their Jewish students. It's not hard to go along with the Civil Rights Act. Is not hard.
At Hillsdale College, I could freely pick them by their color, and we don't. And we never have since 1844, right? All without regard to race, sex, or national origin, says the founding articles. And we've been under pressure to pick them by their color, favoring one bunch over another repeatedly in recent years and earlier years, and we've never done that. Well, they don't have to do that either, right? There's plenty of smart kids of every color, and they could, and they've got applications out.
In other words, they could comply with the Constitution. We can only hope. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back with Dr. Larry Arnn as the Hillsdale Dialogue continues. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is the president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. If you're new to this program because you're a new affiliate, I'm looking at you, Port St. Lucie, and everyone else who've come in recently. We do this once a week with either Dr. Arnn or one of his colleagues at Hillsdale. And if you don't know anything about the college, go and familiarize yourself with it. I want to get Dr. Arnn's reaction to President Trump's dispatching of the B-2s to finish the 12-day war. Israel fought it for 11 days, and then the United States just ended it in a display of American power that we are unused to seeing. That is, in, out, and done in between. What did you think, Dr. Arnn?
Well, of course, I loved it. I saw a meme that said that Iran was boasting that they had destroyed 12 of our bunker bombs with their nuclear facilities.
I haven't seen that.
we can make that exchange all day long. I don't think this problem with Iran is over. I think it's going to go on, but I also think that they are severely weakened, and I think that a pattern is established, which is kind of a theme. It could be the theme for this whole show. There's nothing wrong with America or the world that a fair amount of good government in America won't repair. Amen. And so this thing that, Iran has attacked us verbally incessantly and attacked us physically episodically and many times and destroyed our property and killed our people and claiming all the time that their intention is to kill us all. And
never been shy. The consequence as well is Ron Dermer, who is the strategic affairs minister in the Israeli government, born in Miami, to the son of the Miami mayor, did a two-part interview with Dan Senor this week in which he said, look, if you've wanted to pivot to Asia for 10 years, now you're able to, because Iran, the reason that kept you in the Middle East, the source of all the poison in the Middle East, or 95% of the poison, is now crippled, so you can pivot. And you know what? He's right. If we need to pivot, and we do, it's a lot easier when you don't have to worry about the mad mullahs running around blowing up Americans.
Yeah. And, we've got a lot more to do in national defense. I have read that there's consideration of giving the Israelis a couple of B-2s and some bunker busters and maybe some refueling planes. And I support that. Josh Hammer gave a very good talk for us a few months ago in which he said, you look for your allies among the people who have an affinity with you that's stable and who can patrol their region, who can be effective in keeping down the worst so it doesn't become a problem to us. And so the Israelis are, good value for money. And so, I think it's they should be strong. And remember,
I'm glad to hear that young Mr. Hammer has been on the campus. He's part of the rising tide of this new generation of talking heads and commentators who he got his head on, right? And he's very smart. To whom did he speak? Was he speaking to a convocation or a class? What was he there doing?
It was an off-campus meeting. It was a national leadership seminar, we call them. And where was it? It was in Scottsdale. And it was then, therefore, in February. And he did a very good job. And he's, as you say, he puts an argument together very nicely. And I noticed something he said yesterday about the latest fights going on, whatever they are. And he's just got, he's tough and principled and also sensible. So he made a good argument.
I've noticed that it's very strange. You and I are the same age as when we began, but now there are a whole bunch of young intellectuals who've shown up that we've never, I don't know where they've been because all of a sudden they're out there and they're 40 years old and we're still the same age. So I do not know what happened, but I think Hillsdale College has got a lot to do with it. Have you got a list or a guesstimate on how many Hillsdale College grads are in the Trump administration 2.0?
Well, it's north of 25. There's a lot. And, some of them are in important places now. And they're getting too big for their britches, but I remind them of that. I'm in a great line of work, by the way, because when I see the rising tide of the young, many of them are from our college, and that means I can take credit for everything they do.
You can indeed. In fact, I thought of you when I was listening this week to a podcast by National Review. Rich Lowry was out, and sitting in for Rich was young Jack Butler, Hillsdale graduate of about 10 years ago. So they're everywhere in D.C., and their number is growing. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm coming back with Dr. Arnn right after this.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges, and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is here. That means it's Friday and you're driving home from work and you expect some pearls of wisdom from Dr. Arnn. I wanted to ask him about a Walter Russell Mead essay that appeared in the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday about our men in Europe. It's about Chancellor Merz. And Chancellor Merz has taken over Germany, and it's turned out that the first time we've had a German chancellor that we can kind of rely on in many, many, many years. What did you make of the emergence of Merz and how he's melding into the good ones, which I put Trump and Netanyahu in? I add Merz now. And the ones not so good, I think Macron is kind of flabby and weak, and I'm not sure where he is. And then the awful, and that would have been Justin Trudeau, and I think probably Keir Starmer. What do you make of Mr. Merz?
Well, first of all, I rejoice about it. He does seem pretty good. And remember, the story of modern Germany has, the horrors in it of both world wars and Hitler and all that. But it also has a glory in it. Immediately after the Second World War comes a very great man, Konrad Adenauer. He's mentioned in Russell Mead's article today, and a finance minister named Erhard. And those guys turned Germany around. And Winston Churchill, who was an advocate for resuscitating Germany instantly after the war, he didn't want to punish Germany as severely as we attempted to do it after the First World War. He thinks that's one of the things that led to the Second World War. And in the Second World War, he was more powerful, and lessons had been learned. And so we were allies with Germany in months after the war was over. And Adenauer brought stability, and Erhard and the others brought stability and direction to Germany, and something healthy emerged, something much healthier than the Weimar Republic that succeeded the Kaiser after the First World War. So this looks like a restoration of that, and that's what Walter Russell Mead says in his article, and I hope and pray that it's true, because we need a strong Germany, and we need
a Germany that understands Europe's role, our role in Europe, and Russia's role in Europe. And the traditional power to do that has been Germany in alliance with and sometimes against France. But do you think NATO will effectively coalesce and take care of your... Again, I'm going back to the pivot to the Pacific that Dermer said we can now do because Iran's crushed. I also think we can pivot out of Europe a lot to the Pacific if Germany will step up and lead.
Yeah, and we go back to Josh Hammer's point. We need them to patrol that region. We need them to be strong. You remember, go back to the beginning of how you understand politics. It starts with the question of the polity, the regime. What does it stand for? What is its form and what is its purpose? Germany has an elected government, and that's a real elected government. That is to say, the people can change the dang government if they want to. And that's the first step, right? And they have that. And so we should be friends with them, right? They should be reliable. Now, the EU is a different kind of thing, and Germany has been very involved in that thing. But Germany needs to be responsive to its people and their long-term interests. And if they are, then they are a powerful country. They can help patrol their region, and we don't have to do anything. And
the countries that have the most to lose, that would be Germany, Finland, Poland, frontline states with Russia, the Baltic states. They have to sound the alarms, and they have to be the ones to actually make the case for, if it means weapons to Ukraine, we can help, but they got to lead. And they're perfectly capable of doing that. And I think Merz, along with our friends in Poland and a few of our other NATO allies, are stepping up to do just that. And I think Ukraine will be able to survive. And in fact, it seems to me like Trump may have shifted a bit towards, okay, now that they're a leader. Trump's actually changed NATO significantly and for the better.
We talked about this, I think, but at the latest NATO meeting, apparently Trump truncated the length of the meetings. He doesn't like to sit around with a bunch of heads of states and talk about how important they are. And so, but in the meetings, they got a lot done. And it was all cooked up in advance. And they made these commitments to spend 5%, which I read, by the way, is more than we spent of our GDP.
Well, we are at 3.3% in this year of a huge plus up in the One Big Beautiful Bill. We'll be back down to 2.8, 2.9% next year unless we do another plus up. So we've been carrying all the weight, not enough. Now they're going to start carrying some of the weight, and hopefully we will manage our expenditures better. And a big question, Churchill was always pushing for innovation in military armaments. Do you think we've got people like that in the Trump administration? Churchill invented the tank. He had great belief in airplanes. I've
been impressed with him. And, Elon, who's now Trump's enemy for the time being, first of all, from the point of view of domestic politics, at this point, it's nothing to sneeze at. The right standard is not how much you spend. The right standard is what must you spend and on what. And all that's changing very fast. And so we need to reform our defense procurement. I'm going to give a talk to a bunch of meritocracy fellows next month at Palantir. And I don't even know where the invitation comes.
Oh, I bet you Mike Gallagher, former congressman, is behind that, because former Congressman Gallagher is there. And I believe that I have a proposition for the president in his Article 2 authority. I think he can reprogram funds at the Department of Defense. And I would go finding Palantir and Anduril and all the other startups and give them a big wad of money and say, build me a death ray.
They want me to talk about Churchill, and that's just right. Because Churchill was good at all this stuff, right? Yes. And he was always inventing new stuff, and he was always trying to pare back the defense budget. Except when there was an immediate emergency. I counted up the years one time in Winston Churchill's long career when he was for lower versus the years when he was for higher defense expenditure. And the years for lower outnumber the years for higher.
We're going to the last segment. I got to tell you, as we start the last segment about a Lord Roberts passage that I listened to this week about Churchill. Don't go anywhere, America. Last segment of the Hillsdale Dialogue coming up. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. We will be back into my early life by Winston Churchill next week. I have been reading or listening to Lord Roberts' one-volume history of Churchill prior to our doing the Second World War, and I was struck by the fact that Churchill said of himself that he was the worst Chancellor of the Exchequer ever. That was a widely held view, and then he had come to agree with it, so it was unanimous. So I wanted to make sure I put that in there. Why was he so bad at being Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Well, I disagree with Churchill and everybody else about that. And I have a long correspondence with the late Milton Friedman, who was a friend of mine, about this very question. Churchill took Britain back on the gold standard. And they did it at what they called pre-war parity. And that made deflation. And deflation is bad. Inflation is bad and deflation is bad. Deflation is what led to the Great Depression in America. It was worse in America than it was in Britain. The deflation was greater. But that going back on that standard was the reason there was deflation in Britain. Now, it just turns out, if you get inside it, that Winston Churchill was the most reluctant of all the people about that. And he wrote a sentence that I showed to Milton Friedman that showed that he understood the problem. I would rather see finance, he said, with a capital F, less proud, and industry with a capital I more active. And when I sent that to Milton Friedman, the Nobel Prize winner on questions of monetary policy, he wrote me back and said, wow, he said, he really did get it, didn't he? You're right, and I was wrong. And I said,
that
Milton,
framed and in your office. If you have Milton Friedman saying you are right and I was wrong, just paper the office wall with that. Give that to every student.
I wrote him back and I said, Milton, I am greatly honored that you would say that I corrected you on a question of money policy. But don't worry, I do understand that you know infinitely more about that than I do. So I put that on the record, too.
Well,
yeah,
that's
but
gracious.
I just know about it.
That's great, but I wouldn't have done that. I'm not gracious. I would have just reproduced the letter and handed it out to all the incoming freshmen. And I hope that the next head of the Fed, whoever it is more Milton Friedman-esque than he is Larry Summers and all these other people. I want to close by reminding everyone, go get your copy of My Early Life, because we're going to finish it next week. You can read it before we do that. And then you can get the 6-volume set of Winston Churchill's World War II memoir anywhere, literally anywhere. I bought a new paperback set, because it's easier to carry around and annotate. But you don't need a new one. You can get there's so many of them. It might be the book that is most easily available, or the 6 books that are the most easily available in the world other than the Bible. And so go and find it, get it, and be prepared as we launch into that in 2 weeks. In the meantime, remember all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, and all of the Hillsdale Dialogues, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them, are collected at hughforhillsdale.com. Someday we'll figure out how to categorize them and make them easier to figure out, but right now you just go dive and swim around in them. Thank you, Dr. Arnn. Don't go anywhere, America. Stay tuned to this channel, and I'll see you on Monday on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.